on from there to talk about one of the big films of the past 2 years, and one that there's a great deal of anticipation about, because we can talk about Spider-Man and how well that's done in terms of box office success, not just now but going back in history. There'd be few cartoon characters that have had the reach that this other one has had, and we're talking about the Batman. Now, I must say, boys and girl, I always thought it was Batman, not the Batman. Have I got that wrong? I mean, when I was growing up, there wasn't a "the" in front of the word Batman, was there, Peter Krausz?
No, there wasn't, but the film makes reference to the Batman because of his involvement with his family with what happens in the film.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we've had how many... I did not look this up. Greg, you might know off the top. How many Batmen have there... Sorry, how many Batman films, not Batmen, because I know how many Batmen there have been. Do you know how many films have been made about Batman?
Well, there are the two Michael Keaton ones, the Val Kilmer one, the George Clooney one, the 3 Christian Bale ones, the 2 Ben Affleck ones, and you've got to count the Adam West one from the 60s.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you've named them, because in terms of actors, I have written down Adam West, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, George Clooney, Christian Bale, Ben Affleck, and now Robert Pattinson.
And don't forget the animation.
Yeah, well, that's true too, but I'm talking about flesh and blood, I suppose, Batman. So, and in terms of the other key character here, or there are a few others, but the other one is Zoe Kravitz, who plays Catwoman. I was thinking you had Lee Merriweather, you had Anne Hathaway, Halle Berry, and Michelle Pfeiffer. I think they're the ones that I can name in that sort of guise. But this is very, very dark. It's a very long film. We're talking about near on 3 hours, 176 minutes. It's M-rated. Gotham City, well, it's a cesspool of evil and corruption. And for a couple of years, the Caped Crusader has been trying to clean up the city. But to no avail, the situation's actually deteriorated further. There's been promises of renewal. There's been change in the wind. But, I mean, they're words. It's all fallen on deaf ears. And now there's a madman on the loose. The madman is the Riddler, played by Paul Dano. And he's begun wreaking havoc. He's killing those who purported to be good, decent and fair, but were anything but. The first victim is the mayor. More will follow. Top city officials are disposed of in nefarious ways. Early on, the Batman comes face to face with a dexterous young woman who has her own agenda. And that woman is Selina Kyle, a.k.a. Batwoman. Like Bruce Wayne / the Batman, she has a distressing backstory. But Catwoman is looking for vengeance in a way the Batman is not. And it's interesting, the Batman's catch cry is vengeance, but in a different form. Mind you, I've got to say that this is a path that might see Catwoman cross over to the dark side, and the Batman also has his very, very, very dark moments. But he seems to know most of the time when not to cross that line, although there are a few violent scenes where he appears to go, well, he does appear to step over the line. The Riddler's reign of terror starts on Halloween, and his cryptic clues lead the Batman on an ugly trail of death and destruction. On his side is a senior policeman, Lieutenant James Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright. Now, again, refresh my memory here. I thought it was the police commissioner in previous episodes of the Batman. Why have we not got the police commissioner in that role? Why is there a senior policeman? I was trying to sort of figure that out. Can anybody offer an opinion on that, please? No?
Not really, apart from saying this is a revisionist Batman.
Yeah, I think that's fair and reasonable. Now, among those standing in their way, I'm talking about in the way of the Batman and the senior policeman and the city as a whole, is a nightclub owner, the Penguin. And I've got to say, I had no idea, because I genuinely don't look at invitations about who's in movies, and unless I happen to have seen a short or trailer, I wouldn't know. Did you recognise the Penguin, any of you, if you didn't know who that was?
No, not at all.
It's amazing.
Didn't have a clue.
Yeah, facially scarred, unrecognisable Colin Farrell. I mean, you could have hit me over the head with a lettuce leaf afterwards thinking, was that Colin Farrell? Wow. And there's another criminal mastermind with connections to Catwoman here, Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro. And he knew and also had an association with Bruce Wayne's father, Thomas Wayne. Talking about Thomas Wayne, Andy Serkis portrays the Batman's dutiful protector and confidant Alfred, who worked for Thomas Wayne. Having said that, I was a little disappointed Alfred didn't have more of a role, quite frankly, in this movie. Given that it was 176 minutes long, you would have thought he could have done a little bit more. But anyway, it is dark, it is cold, it is humourless, and it also has a hard edge, does it not, Jacqueline? You kick us off, please.
Oh, yes, it definitely has a hard edge. I mean, overall, I think you'd say the word dark. It is dark both in its context and its story and in the look of it. And it's slow. I found it slow and I found it long. And I'm not the demographic for this film, I must admit, but I'm quite happy to see them if I think I'm going to see something that will blow me away as being spectacularly different. And I think I cling to... I'm not a comic book superhero type audience, but I cling to how much I enjoyed the very first Iron Man. That's going back away, with Robert Downey Jr. And I've never been able to enjoy another one as much as that. And I certainly didn't enjoy this one really very much at all.
Have you seen the other Batman movies or not?
Yes, I have. And, after a while, Alex and guys, after a while, they're kind of a blur for me. It really is the same story being rehashed, but with slightly different tangents. I thought the Catwoman potential love interest here had something going for it. But even that didn't really get anywhere. And it was a little bit strange, too, the circumstances under which they meet up. And then the way this could be a flirtation going on. I thought that was a little bit strange. But it's got potential, and certainly she's gorgeous. I loved seeing, her moves and her character. She's quite feisty in that. But too dark and too slow for me, Alex.
Well, I mean, the best of the breed, in my opinion, by far was Joker. I mean, that was extraordinary. It was, in fact, Jacqui, I think it was your film of the year, like it was my film of the year when it came out.
I think it was, actually, Alex. You're right. You're right.
So, I mean, this is not in that league. Please,
I was really looking forward to seeing Robert Pattinson in this, because I'm a big fan of his and of Kristen Stewart, going back their partnership together in the Twilight films. And they've similarly chosen quite art house films in the years since, and very successfully in their acting skills along the way. And I don't know why he's... I actually think he looked good. He had a really good, imposing physique. And his voice was great, but I think it was the entire story, the narrative, and the way it was brought together that let me down.
Greg, I mean, the lack of emotion other than anger displayed by Pattinson, well, it may be his trademark, it is in the Batman, but that started to wear thin after a while. I mean, I just wanted a little bit more sort of light and shade, and I understand if it was primarily dark, but it was only dark, and that worried me a bit.
But this is a fairly dark film, though.
That's true.
Alex, and there's not a lot of light in this film, and I thought casting Robert Pattinson was a bold choice by Matt Reeves, but he made quite a few bold choices in this film. I found Pattinson very convincing when he was in the Batman costume, less so when he was playing Bruce Wayne, I thought there. But we've come a long way from the Adam West days of Batman, which were light and colourful and camp. Batman's been a lot darker there, and even the DC cinematic universe has been darker as well with the superhero stories there. And this is arguably the darkest and most bleak take on the Caped Crusader yet. It's a dark psychological thriller. The film is set in a rotten Gotham City, as you call it, a cesspool, and I thought it reeked reek of corruption and everything. Remind me of New York, a Taxi Driver, and the city in Seven. I thought that's
absolutely. I can see that. Did you also appreciate Zoe Kravitz? Because I really thought she was terrific in this movie. She did display a range of emotion, and I thought it was a really excellent choice in terms of a lead performer.
All the casting here I thought was really different there, including, as we mentioned, Colin Farrell as the Penguin is no longer the diminutive figure of fun played by Burgess Meredith or Danny DeVito here. He's a bit of a nasty piece of work here. And also the Riddler is a nutcase here, more so than he has been in the past, played by Paul Dano, who sort of gives another take on his edgy nutcase roles there. The film's
I would have thought appropriately deranged. That's the term I would have used for the Riddler. And there was a sort of pompousness in the representation of the Penguin, too.
Yep. And the film's been shot in primarily dark colours. There's not a lot of light here. Most of the action takes place either in nighttime or in darkened interiors there, so there's not a lot of light here as well. Now, Jacqui mentioned that she found the 3 hours a bit long. I didn't worry me. I wasn't conscious at the time, even though the 3 hours went by there. But it is
really. I really was, Greg. I'm virtually in lockstep with Jacqui. I probably enjoyed it a little bit more than she did. But I mean, to be honest, I thought the first 2/3 of it were better than the last third, and that troubled me in the sense that you walk out of there thinking, oh, gee, it could have been something quite special, but it was let down towards the end, and I really did notice the time, which is interesting. What about you, Peter?
Look, I found the film both interesting and compromising at the same time. It's Matt Reeves obviously intended to make this the darkest Batman film of all the previous ones, and I'm not quite sure if I agree about the Joker being such a great film. I think
You're kidding. You are kidding. Are you wrong again? I mean, you've been on your best behaviour. We've gone through, 20 minutes of the show, and you haven't put a foot wrong, and now all of a sudden you're going to put down one of the greatest movies of the 21st century.
I really take issue with that comment. I think that's ridiculous.
But that was fantastic.
No, it was overwritten. It was overly dark, the Joker I'm talking about, and a one-note sort of film. Whereas the Batman tries to eke out more of a political subtext in the story, and it's trying to make some political comments along the way about Gotham City being a metaphor for New York or for any corrupt city or for the USA in general. So I found that interesting. I think the use of an orchestral music score, especially at the end, was very significant because that was a counterpoint to the darkness that prevails in the film. And I thought that Matt Reeves was going for more of a Blade Runner look of the film because of that sort of darkness. And it was interesting to see Robert Pattinson in the role of the Batman. I think he works quite well as the Batman. As Bruce Wayne, when his face was in close-up, he reminded me of Conrad Veidt in The Cabinet of Caligari. So I thought Matt Reeves was going for a sort of a German expressionism look in the film.
I can certainly see that. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the production values in this film are particularly strong, Peter. Grunge, the seething underbelly of the city, I thought they were particularly well captured. But the thing that troubled me, I suppose, is that it lost its way. It became, I thought, ridiculous and unnecessarily inflated. It had excessive exposition, and it did not need that. And the platitudes, I mean, it became overindulgent, it became bogged down.
That's the problem with the film. There is some repetition and redundancy in the way the narrative is put together. And so by the time you reach the end of the film, you've experienced a lot of things a number of times to make the point again and again about vengeance and about corruption and about Bruce Wayne being perhaps pivotal in this. So that part of it disappointed me. But it's interesting, the pointer at the end of the film to someone we've been talking about, and of course there's going to be a follow-up film, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point when you make, you sort of reboot something, especially with a series, the expectation is that there'll be more. Think about the people involved in this. the writer. Well, you've got sort of Matt Reeves, who we've spoken about, who's sort of writer, director, producer, but also Peter Craig, who did The Town, which was a pretty strong movie as well. I mean, Gotham City, fear, and this is one of the lines in the film, is a tool. I just wish that Matt Reeves had wielded a less is more approach. And I think that, if it was a shorter film, Greg, would it not have been a better film?
It possibly could have been, but as I said, I wasn't conscious at the time with this one. I was engrossed in it. Especially the darker vision of it all, and the way that the murder of Thomas Wayne was inextricably linked to the events that were happening in the film.
Indeed. I mean, the sins of the father. Jacqui, I mean, I suppose you've been the most, in terms of negativity, you've been the most negative. Did you accept that there were impressive moments of tension and drama in The Batman?
Not many. I didn't feel particularly tense or involved in it, and I think a lot of that has to do with having an emotional connection with a person or people. And I really didn't get what I had that with Joker, because we saw, in depth his backstory, and
yes,
we really formed an emotional connection with him in that. This one, I had no opportunity to really care about anyone. And if I don't have that...
Zoe Kravitz's character, Catwoman, no?
Well, she's pretty feisty sort of lady, and she was looking after herself pretty well. I don't know that that she ever took me to the edge of being concerned for her welfare. She was doing it pretty well. I enjoyed watching her, but I didn't really have a deep care for her. And I also think, maybe the darkness also, we keep saying the darkness, but I think that was the overriding aspect. That's how I'll remember the film.
I don't think there's any question that we'll all remember it for that reason. Do you think they can sustain it? And this is the other question. It's all well and good, Peter, that we say that there's going to be another movie and there will be, etc. But can you maintain that dark character through a trail, or does it have to lighten up at some point? What's your thought?
It's an interesting question because it will depend on the audience response. But I suspect if it's the same filmmaker that he's going to continue that sort of dark evocation of that whole, Gotham City being corrupt and needing to be revitalised. Maybe the sequel will look at a revitalised Gotham City but still being corrupt.
Yeah, I think corruption's going to be at the core of everything, because that's what we associate with Gotham City from time immemorial. That it's a place that's the reason the Batman needed to come along, because the city needed cleaning up. So look, let's get some scores, and we'll go from tallest to shortest, or shortest to tallest in terms of scores. Jacqui, I suspect you'll be the lowest, so let's go with you.
Yes, I'll probably be the lowest, and I probably would say first off that I wouldn't even go to the next one, most likely, unless I had to. I thought the ending was awful too, by the way, really awful, and I think it could be quite offensive to some people, I'll just say that. And it was too long, and I really preferred the Lego Batman movie, so I'm going to give this 5.5 out of 10 just to pass it.
Okay, and I wanted more out of the Lego Batman movie as well, Jacqui, I might say. So there you go. 5.5 out of 10.
Superior production.
Okay. Now, I think in terms of scores, I suspect that it's going to be maybe Peter next. So, Peter, you go.
And by the way, the Lego Batman movie didn't have enough dark Lego shapes in it. So, anyway, the Batman, look, there was much to admire in the film, and also some padding and compromises at the same time. I think it's worth having a look at, but it's not a definitive The Batman by any means. But I give it 7 out of 10.
And I, too, give it a 7 out of 10. This is The Batman, M-rated, 176 minutes. Now, Greg, I'm expecting you to give it a higher mark than that. Go for it.
Well, there you go. I'm going to give it 8 out of 10.
There, see? I mean, picked it. Very, very nice. Okay.
So good,
do you remember what you gave the Joker by comparison?
I think I gave it a similar score, yeah.
So you didn't think this was... You thought this was as good as the Joker?
On the par, yeah. They both were sort of dark, compelling tales of madness and mayhem.
Okay. Peter, just out of interest, because I mean, I enjoy saying that you are wrong, and in this case, you definitely are. What did you give the Joker?
Everyone's a critic. I gave the Joker 5 out of 10.
Oh, Peter. No.
That's what I'm saying. Jacqui, why do I have him on? It's like knocking your head against a brick wall with him.
No,
That's why
I just think he should be sent out to see it again, I think.
You're joking.
Thank you. I've just looked it up. I gave it a 9. And
I would have given it a 9. I guess I would have given it a 9, maybe even a 10, but certainly a 9. Yep, loved it.
5. Oh my golly! Right.